patience. Number one, right? I'm going to be patient. I'm never going to badmouth their dad. I'm going to, I'm going to be there. I'm going to be consistent. And if it takes 10 years, it takes 10 years, and that's actually a win. And that's what I put in my head. I'm like, actually longer. I'm saying, if he's 28 and all of a sudden says, I love you, and it took him till he was 28, I met him when he was 9, I'm like, success.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Mediocre Dads, where being mediocre is a choice and you have to refuse to be mediocre every single day. I'm your host, Queon. I go by Q, of course. And on this episode of Mediocre Dads, I'm joined by a very special guest named Steven Anderson. And I was talking to him a little bit before, and I can tell you guys I'm already excited to have him on as a guest because I could tell this episode we're just going to have a good banter, a good conversation. And that's what it's all about. That's kind of what I aspire to have, is just great conversations with people and kind of see where they go and then share their experiences and their knowledge with you all. And so that being kind of get right into it. Hey, Steve, can you kind of tell the audience a little bit about yourself, who you are, and what you do?
Yes. And hey, I'm excited too. And I said this before we came on. Episode 40, if anybody hasn't listened to that one yet, go back too, because I listened to that this morning and it's awesome.
I appreciate it.
My background is, so number one for this podcast, right? I'm a dad that started out, and late to it. And I'll tell you super short. My dad had a nervous breakdown when I was, teenager. Handling emotions wasn't his thing, right? And so my mom, bipolar, there was a lot of, growing up, I was protected. I had food, no complaints on there, but I didn't look at marriage and stuff and go, oh, wow, that looks great.
Mm-hmm.
And it took a long time for me to sort of work through and go, hey, wait a second, I'm not that kid again. Dad's not me, and then so I met a wonderful woman when I was much older, right? So I came into the dad game late, started as the boyfriend. She was divorced, and it's then boyfriend, stepdad. And then once their dad died, tragically, right, because he has alcohol. Actually, he's a veteran, right? And part of that was he drank himself to death. There's no other way to say it. And I've heard about that, but to actually see somebody doing that is like, holy crap, right?
Yeah.
And so he was out of the boy's life in that sense already before he died. And then once he did die, though, I adopted him like pretty much fast as I could. You know what I mean? Because it's like they've been my boys for longer than that. So that's the dad stuff. And then just as far as, I think where these ideas come from, or the stuff that I talk about, it's a blend of, being the first, when I mentored boys in a mentoring organization, right? I was the adult that I wanted in my life growing up, and now once I had my boys, I'm like, holy crap. It's like, you make fatherhood what you're the man. You make this. And, it's like my dad was too overwhelmed with work stress. His dad died when he was 5, so he was still pissed off at God. And it took him, and we had talks, great. As an adult, we had a good relationship, but it took a long time. And so for me, I got to the point a couple years ago where I'm like, time for a career change. I'd been teaching for 20 years. If I'm going to do it, now's the time. And I want to take all the stuff that I've done, the experiences, and start working with dads, right? Because there's no more important man, right, in a daughter or a son's life than her dad. And right, it doesn't have to be biological, because we know there's a lot of them who disappear, right? And sometimes intentionally, and sometimes, accidents, you name it. So, and I just felt that, right, in my bones, and it was time to make that shift. And so that's what I've been doing for the last 2 years.
That's awesome. It can kind of diving right in. You said you were teaching for 20 years. What was that like, and what grade and what did you teach?
All right. So, the community college, and I started in English, and I'm a writer, I don't care about anybody's grammar. but my students, and if the sentence made sense, right? That's the
Yeah.
only reason you need to know grammar is so when people read your stuff, it makes sense. I'd always get that question, right? I better watch what I say. And it's like, I don't care. I say ain't. Relax, people. It's just about written stuff needs to be
Mhm.
clear. But so I love teaching. And also, though, it's tough to get an English teaching job because you throw a stick in a room and you'll hit somebody who has an English degree.
Oh, wow.
So the competition is there. And after about 10 years, I actually had I switched over. I took some more classes on education and actually started teaching in the reading department. And it might seem crazy that why am I teaching reading at college? And it's because our K through 12 system is great in some ways and absolutely fails 50% of our students. Ballpark as far as the amount of adults, 18-year-olds who leave high school with the reading level under 8 is
Mhm.
embarrassing for us as a country when you look into it. So I was
Yeah.
doing that. And it's not because anybody's stupid. There's so many ways to get around reading. And I like that. I taught student success courses. And then because of other things, I ended up teaching some English at the end. And I'll wrap it up this way. I was teaching typically writing class, but I taught a mythology class, which I loved. My students were really engaged in this thing. In my last year, I only got to teach it 3 times, but I'm teaching this and talking about the hero's adventure, and we're looking at these stories and talking about, what's the dragon you need to fight
Mhm.
and all these kind of things. And I'm like going, well, what adventure am I going on? I
Yeah.
feel like I'm sort of flattened out. I still love teaching, but as far as I've done it for 20 years, right? There want to be more. And I also thought about my sons too. I want to see them that you're never stuck. It doesn't matter how long you've been doing something. And, I enjoyed it, but I knew it was time. And I ended on a really high note, right? With
Yeah.
that class. And yeah, it was great. And then it was just sometimes, right? It's time to move.
Yeah, no, I got you. No, I was always just curious because I've spoken to a few different teachers, and I always find it interesting speaking to teachers, and educators, I'll say, because everyone has their different their experience within the education system. Some great, some and some like I'm glad I'm done. So
I'll tell you. So I doing this dad stuff, right? I've got free time. I went and got a substitute teaching license, right? I've
mhm.
never been in K through 12. I didn't want to be in K through 12. That's why I taught at college, right? I don't want no way. You pay to be here because I don't
Mhm.
want to be in a classroom, right, where kids are forced to by law to be there.
Yeah.
But I thought, let's go see what kids right now are actually going through. And, it's amazing. I don't do this often because I'm not crazy, right? And
Mhm.
that's
You're like, I
so,
retired for a reason.
yeah. Some you go to one school and, most of the kids are paying attention and okay, let's learn. You go to another school and the vibe is totally different, and it's the school too. It's, you can tell
Yeah.
whose kids' parents are telling them education is worth it and whose don't care what they do.
Yeah.
It's so, I feel for those teachers, but I've never ever thought we're doomed because of the students. You know what I mean? I've always thought
Yeah.
you get to know them, and each year, there's changes, but ultimately, right? They're young adults trying to make it in the world and figure out who they are, and basically pretty good. So that's always been, yeah. The students have never got me down.
Yeah. No, I get that. I totally get that because there's a lot of personality with each and every individual, but it's when you are there as the adult to do a job, but obviously in a lot of different ways, it's not just a job. It's an opportunity to help educate the next generation. There's a lot of outside factors that can
Yeah.
hinder your ability to do that. And then there's a lot of internal factors within those young adults and those young kids that you can't see that they have to take that baggage, if you will, to go to a school for 8 hours a day to learn things where they don't understand why it's important that they learn these things,
Yeah.
and then leave and go home and be told this is important, or maybe be told it's not important. And then you are sitting there as educator, like, at least I have 10 that are paying attention,
Right.
that want to be here, can learn, and I'm going to try to still educate the other kids and involve them, but I don't have the luxury of time to sit there and mentor each and every kid like you would want to get them to the point where those other 10 students are, depending on the classroom size. But for you, kind of going backwards in your life, you mentioned your dad. So what was it like growing up for you? What was that that life experience like for you?
Lonely as hell, right? And I think, but that's part of being a teenager. I think a lot of, teenagers can feel lonely, but there was when he left, you know what I mean? He's gone. There's no cell phones,
Yeah.
back in the 80s. We just, threw rocks at each other when we wanted to get our attention, right? And so he's gone. He wasn't, I don't remember phone calls. And so that sucked. But, and I think this is really important for all parents out there, right? Is whatever's going on, your kid thinks that's normal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I didn't know there could be this other thing, but my coping mechanism was I didn't want anybody to know what was going on. And I don't know, I was the youngest. I have an older brother. And later on, when I kind of read up a little bit, this like mental illness is a little bit like having a parent who's an alcoholic,
Yeah.
with the sense of secrecy, right? Especially you go back into the 80s, there was much less talking about mental illness.
Yeah.
So it was about keeping this secret, so how was I going to keep the secret? I was going to do great in school. I was going to tell nobody what's going on. And I didn't. And that was, in my way, I thought I was protecting the family, but I was cutting me off from everybody. But if people would look, oh, look, there's Steve. He's getting great grades, looks happy. Everything must, be fine. And so I kept, it was funny. I just had a 35th class reunion, and for the first time, I think somebody in my high school actually found out that my dad had almost killed himself. You're like,
wow.
I never knew that. I'm like, yeah, because I was really good at, covering that up. So I was always looking to do well. Better strategy than doing drugs. I think it's just as far as being successful, right? But long term, it really set me up to be a lousy boyfriend. You know what I mean? Distant and that. Yeah. So I had this weird life where I would do well as I became an adult, do well at work, do well at school, and just have a disaster dating life. Right. Because, who wants to date a brick wall?
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's like, well, you seem nice and funny. What's going on? I'm good.
Yeah.
I would just go back and give myself a hug and say, man, you gotta take the risk.
How old were you when your dad tried to kill himself?
I think I was about 15. And actually went back and looked it up, but it's funny when you're under a lot of stress, it actually gets in the way of memory formation. So part of it might just be bad memory. Part of it under so much stress that a lot of it just becomes hazy. But yeah, he was he ran a rehab center in rural Minnesota, and super stressful job. I've learned all of this later, right? Like there was a lawyer in town who didn't like him because they bumped heads on a city council. So every time my dad fired somebody, he would sue him. The lawyer would go find the guy who got fired, sued him 13 times, and the lawyer lost every time. Right.
Wow.
So which could tell you that my dad was doing it.
Yeah.
But so he I didn't know this. He'd come home, go to his office.
Yep.
Right. So wouldn't see him much.
I do that.
Yeah. And now if he would have, and this is all hindsight, right? If you need to go to your office, Queon, or anybody else out there, right? That's freaking good regulation. If you go to your office, but how long do you stay there? He'd stay there all night. If you're doing that, I'm going to say, hey, how's that working for you?
Yeah.
kind of deal. And for him, finding all this out later, he's been anxious since he was a kid, right? So part of it, kind of, some Andersons, my last name, right? Some of us carry some extra anxiety around. Not me, my brother more so. He's even talked about it. But yeah, he just wouldn't talk. And so basically, it was one of those things where all of a sudden it's like, where's dad? And he's like, he's in Wilmer, locked up for 30 days so he doesn't kill himself. And I honestly don't even remember. The only thing I remember about that time is when he got out, right? And he had been the director of a rehab center, and when he got out, he was rebuilding. His first job was as a waiter.
Wow.
In a town 30 miles away, right? So hopefully nobody from our town would run into him and see him.
Yeah.
So I remember going to the Happy Chef, and it was a big deal because we were supporting dad, who's, gotten to a place where now he can hold a waiter job, So I don't know the mountain that he was carrying, but I do know it cracked him, and and he wasn't able to be there. So, one of the things that really is important for me, right, is, making sure I'm there. I don't have to be at every tennis. My youngest plays tennis, right? But I'm going to be at a lot of them. You know what I mean? And this is I never put this together till just now talking to you. And I had a couple thoughts pop in, connections made listening to your earlier episode. When my dad left, I don't remember him reaching out. He went to South Dakota. It was getting a master's degree. When my son, he went to college, and my oldest went to Mankato, not that far away. We'd see him once in a while, but, text and stuff. And then he went to California for the second year.
Yeah.
And I said, man, I'm doing something. Every Monday, when he's not in this house, I go to the post office and I mail him a postcard.
Really?
Yes.
That's awesome.
Because, yeah, he's going to know. Now he's back in the Minnesota, and he's just about 30 miles away. He's not in the house. Every Monday, I send him a postcard and I take a picture from the mailbox, because I know twice a week, right? When he gets that picture, he knows dad's thinking about him. When he shows up in his mailbox, right? It's like, he's screwed, man. No matter what, at least twice a week, he's going to know dad's thinking about him, and he can't get away from it,
That's awesome. I love that. And, I think it's the little things like that definitely, one, as a dad, encourage us to do better, right? It allows us to be vulnerable in a way that we can't, we're not comfortable being vulnerable with our kids or our significant other at that current moment. And so, like, doing these little things as men, and as dads, I can tell you, I think is our way of saying, like, hey, I love you, I'm thinking about you, and I may not show it to you in a way that the world says I should be doing this, right? I should whether that's calling you every day or texting you or sending you money, whatever the case might be, right? But this little act of, like, hey, I'm going to send you a postcard, and that's just my way of saying, hey, I'm thinking about you, I love you, I haven't forgotten about you. You may not be here, but I know where you are, and I just want to let you know that I miss you. We're still connected. The connection is not broken just because you're not in the same place that I am physically. And I love that. I think that's a phenomenal idea. My kids, one of the things that I do when I'm deployed, is write them letters. And, and like, okay, I writing letters, I know it's an old school thing, right?
No, man, it's awesome.
But it feels good to put, and I know we're going to get into the journaling thing, but it feels good to put pen on paper and actually kind of write out your thoughts and your feelings and and everything that you're going through in a way where your kids, when they can get it, when they can read this letter. For me, my kids are not going to be, they're going to be a little older when they read these letters, but it's their way of saying, like, wow, this is what my dad was going through at this time. And it kind of is a full circle moment where they can say, like, there was part of me that, I might have been mad at my dad or hated my dad even, but now to understand, like, there were things that I wasn't seeing. There were things that my parents had purposely hidden from me to protect me. And I didn't realize they were protecting me. I thought they just didn't trust me or didn't love me, didn't care enough about me. And it's amazing as kids how we come up with these
Oh yeah, it's our fault.
these ideas in our heads of how we perceive these things that are happening within our lives as kids. It's because we don't know. We don't have the life experience to understand what our parents are doing and where they're trying to get us, and how they're trying to grow us into to be these functioning adults, if you will, in society. We just think it's because they don't want us to have fun, or they don't want us to have any friends. It's just like my parents just want to keep me trapped in this place because they don't care about me. And then when you become older and you're the adult in the room, if you will, it becomes a moment of like, holy crap, I now understand what my parents were talking about. I think to the moment where it's kind of a running joke I have with some of my soldiers. It's something happens and I go, oh my gosh, we need an adult. And they all kind of look at me and but in the Army, it's kind of, and you understand this, it was kind of like, hey, we need a sergeant. Who's in charge? And everyone's looking at me and I'm kind of looking around like, who's in charge? Oh yeah, that's right. It's me. Gosh darn it. Okay. What am I going to do? It's kind of that aha moment. You're like, oh, I'm the guy. This is it. And this is happening. But even as you grow, that's kind of when you get to that moment, you kind of realize this is what you kind of understand now, have a better understanding of what your parents are going through. But for you emotionally, you mentioned there was a very stressful time to going through that. So how did you, I mean, outside of saying, hey, I'm going to just succeed in school, what were the ramifications of that, though? Like, what were the ramifications of saying, okay, hey, this is how I'm going to block everybody out, but, mentally I'm going through this thing. What were the ramifications for you mentally? And then also in that moment, how did you feel? Was it anger? Was it sadness? Was it bitterness? What were some of the emotions that you were feeling?
I wouldn't be able to couldn't express it at the time, which was part of the problem.
Yeah.
Right. Just being able to identify if I would, thinking back, loneliness, absolutely. Sadness, it's like, and part of the loneliness, right, becomes self-inflicted because I'm not, and it's looking, there's a reason, we wear masks.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of times you need to. And there are certain situations where it's like, I'm not, if I don't know you, I'm not going to get vulnerable in front of you unless the context of, you got to give me a pretty specific situation for me to just, go. No. So there's a time and place, right? But I think as men, we got to be able to take that mask off at times, right? So our partner can see us as vulnerable. Right. And we want to be, the provider and strong and hell, yes, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, but not 24/7, and because, our people want to help too and feel like they're important. So one of the things I didn't get right was by walling off, right? I'm not giving people a chance to give me what I'm giving them, right? Because I'm a great listener. So yeah, I'll listen to you and you can tell me what's going on and they feel better, but I never gave anybody a chance to listen what I was going through.
Yeah.
So that was a big thing. And I would, have one or two close friends, and that's it. And even they wouldn't know,
Really?
what really happened. Yeah, no, I didn't. It's funny. I have my three best friends in my life. Two I met in the Army back in 89, 90, and one I met in college. And my college best friend, I knew him like 5-6 years. And so we're like probably 27, 28. And that's the first time I told somebody, the first time I told a friend what had happened when I was growing up.
Yeah.
And he's like, are you kidding me? And I'm like, yeah, no, and that was when I started, and really in my 30s, going, okay, I need to figure something out.
Yeah.
because this is,
Did it?
not working.
And I guess you didn't mention this, but you mentioned the impact it had on, the relationships you were trying to have and building. So did that in a way impact, I mean, you said it did, but my question is kind of geared around this. So impact relationships, but how did it impact relationships? Meaning like you weren't able to have a relationship with people, or even just someone else, or was it to the point where it was like, hey, I'm even faking it to be with this person because I'm just doing it because I feel like I need to do this because this is what we're supposed to do as people.
Well, so lots of short relationships where I would say yes to, I would say yes, because if I agree to everything, you're going to love me, which is stupid. But
Yeah.
that was, I'm just going to say it. So a lot of short stuff where a lot of smart women were like, oh, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And one really terrible long-term relationship. And we both came back. She had been through some horrible stuff as a girl and a young woman. And it was a very unhealthy relationship. And that was the final, like, no. And I was in it for a long time, and working my way out of it was part of where I did a lot of the work. And see this, I think, and my oldest is going to be 21 soon. I think in your 20s, if you want to blame your parents for however messed up your life is, knock yourself out. But just know, once you get in the 30s, that shit's over. You know what I mean? Then you got to own it as an adult. Go ahead.
Yeah.
So my sons, they get to blame their 20s. Go for it. Right. But once they hit 30, it's like, okay, no, you've been around long enough as an adult. And, when I say this before going back, and what did I see growing up? Right. I didn't see, you know, two loving parents having a good time, and just I did, and so when I got out of that bad relationship and had done the work, I was finally in a good spot. And then I met Katie, right, who's my wife, and she had come from, her husband. She got divorced because, after the war, the first Gulf War, when he came back, he was in military intelligence, and he didn't pull any triggers, but he gave information, and he was a sensitive, Marine,
Mm-hmm.
a really high quality put together Marine. But that stuff, I think, some from other things growing up, he didn't get help.
Yeah.
Right. And so she was living with an alcoholic, drinking in the basement, walking on eggshells kind of stuff. And so both of us got out of, you know, bad relationships, and we both done some work. So it's like when we met and we start talking, and it's like, oh man, it's like she's looking at me going, well, you seem to be able to talk about how you're feeling. And
Yeah.
I'm looking at her saying, well, man, she seemed pretty put together and healthy too. And I had no idea about how I love being married. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? I could not now imagine not being married to Katie, and having it's like, this is great. We laugh, we joke every once in a while, we get vulnerable. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? We do, and we can even remember the first time we did. Just had this conversation that went a little deeper than our other ones, and afterwards we're like, something just happened there, did you? We're
Yeah.
both like, that was it, right? We just shared a little bit. So, I don't even know where that started, but man, I had no idea being married could be this good. And it doesn't mean we don't, you know, have struggles. Sometimes our boys get frustrated with us or have their own things. It's not easy, but yeah, and you get the right person, that's a good life.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And it's amazing when you find the right person, or when God puts the right person in your life. It's amazing how the people talk about the yin and yang, right? Like just how meshable you guys are. Like you're different, but you're the similar and the same, where it's just, if the puzzle piece fits and you guys and everything, it just makes sense. And I've been married I just hit 10 years in September, And so, me and my wife, I've known my wife since, and I kind of tell the story all the time, but I met my wife in sixth grade. We started dating her sophomore year, my junior year in 2011. Yep, 2011. And we've been together ever since. And it's not to say we haven't gone through our, our rash times or bad times, if you will, but since 2011, we've been going strong, and we've been married since 2014. And we got married young. I was 19, she was 18. And when I asked her to marry me, she was still in high school. So, but joining the Army will do that.
Yeah.
Don't recommend people get young married. Not to say it's a bad thing, but I will say there is a learning curve. And, obviously, between my parents, her parents, there was a lot of learning that we had to do very quickly to grow up, and become our own two people. But I say that because I think it's just amazing where we are now, have two kids, expecting our third, and we are it's great. You know what I mean? Just to be in love with somebody. And it's weird because, I never thought I would be able to, I never understood this idea, this concept of people saying like, oh, I'm in love with my wife to this day. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I love my parents, but like, I'm not, the love I had for my parents when I was like, I don't know, 10 or 12, versus now is it's different. It just grows. It's not the same. You know what I mean? But I never understood it until being married, and now going on 10 years on, I'm like, nah, I love my wife. It's amazing. I think she's amazing. And so I understand that sentiment that you have, especially towards your wife. So how many kids do you have, and how old are they?
2. So 20 and 16.
Okay.
When I met them, they were 5 and 9.
5 and 9. That's a young age. Okay.
Yeah. And so it's really interesting. And when I met him, and here's the thing for all the stepdads out there, right? And basically, and I remember hearing this on a radio show that they're talking to some experts. If you're a stepdad coming in and the child is like 8 or under, you're probably pretty good. 9 or above, you're in for some rough waters, because under at that 8, just intellectually, okay, there's this, if you're good, you're just another cool adult. Hit 9, now the divorce is kind of being understood, and you're this sort of interloper thing can be. So, and that was with my boys, right? The 5-year-old, we hit it off like that. The 9-year-old, he's kind of like, And he was, and we didn't know this at the time, right? But when they would go to their dads for the weekend, it started getting like just stupid stuff, not supportive stuff. And so, if his own biological dad is stressing him out, I can see why he might want to keep some distance from this new guy who's just coming in.
Yeah.
So that relationship took a lot longer, right? And luckily for me, I'd already been doing that boys to men stuff, which is, it's no longer in Minnesota. It's national though. So there's some
awesome.
states that have it. It's a good program. And I had done enough mentoring with, guys whose moms were divorced, and so I'd heard stories from them about, what they're going through. So I'm like, okay, patience. Number one, right? I'm going to be patient. I'm never going to badmouth their dad. I'm going to, I'm going to be there. I'm going to be consistent. And if it takes 10 years, it takes 10 years, and that's actually a win. And that's what I put in my head. I'm like, actually longer. I'm said, if he's 28 and all of a sudden says, I love you, and it took him till he was 28, I met him when he was 9, I'm like, success.
Yeah.
And luckily it was so funny because it took about 8 years.
Okay.
And he just kind of said it before he left, going upstairs. All of a sudden it's like, I look at Katie, and Katie looks at me to be like, did he just say? She's like, yes. And just a little.
Did you forget to say it back in your excitement?
Oh, heck no. But man, yeah. But it was like, what just happened? Did that, but patience, man. I think that's that's the magic power. If dads can harness patience, no matter, it's like,
It's
man,
amazing what patience does in any and every situation. All right.
yeah.
Like, and for some of us, it's patience is an easily learned skill that we were able to learn from a younger age to where we are now. And for others, it's a skill that comes later on. And I'm smiling and I'm laughing in my head because it is a skill that has taken me, even to this day, I haven't fully learned it. But it is a skill that has taken me a while, and it took me having 2 daughters to really understand what patience is, because I firecracker usually, but now I'm like, oh, let's assess what's going on. Let's figure it out before I just go off the rails. And you got Drill Sergeant, Drill Sergeant Queon over here with his kids when, that's not what they need, and that's not who they're looking for.
Do you want a trick that I learned from a neuroscience class I took?
Absolutely.
Okay, so this was really cool. It was 14 weeks long, just fascinating stuff, neuroscience for coaches. And it was like, so just to get you the good stuff about how we do stuff. And I'll only use 2 terms. There's our nervous system, right? There's a sympathetic nervous system, and this thing is set up for crisis.
Yeah.
So your kid is running across the street, you get, jacked up in cortisol, steroids, and you're ready to go, right? Because you need to, but you're not thinking well. It's just like, okay, do something.
React, yeah.
You're parasympathetic. They call it the rest and digest. This is when you're kind of cool and laid back and your body's just doing its things. When you're jacked up, you're not going to think your best. You just won't. So how do you switch out? And one of the things that they've done they've found is if we've all heard count to 10, right? But close. If you for a minute just take 60 seconds and do 6 10-second breathing cycles, so you take 10 seconds to breathe in and out. So you do that 6 times and you're going to pull yourself out of that. Oh, I got to do something right now.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden, right, you're going to get 7 more ideas in your head that you couldn't when your nervous system is kicking out. You got to give that answer, right this second. And it's legit.
Yeah.
And how many of us really can't take a minute, before we say, before we lay down the punishment, right? Or, before we do whatever. And, that's just one of those things to slow down, pull back to, where you want to be a dad from, right? You don't want to do it from the crisis mode, right? You want to be doing it from cool dad. And then just imagine to yourself, okay, everybody else is freaking out. I'm going to take a minute. Okay, dad's here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'm more relaxed,
I learned this trick, and we call it we have this thing, and it's resilience, right? And part of the resilience and helping getting in moments like where, like you mentioned, right, we're just high intense. So it's whether kids are running into the street, or you open the door and they just run out they run outside, and you're like, I got to do something. I got to grab them before, God forbid, a train just falls out of the sky, and I wasn't there to grab them. You know what I mean? Something. Our mind just goes into this fight or flight mode where we just have to react. We have to respond. And it's something similar. We call mental games. And one of the ones that I remember that we did was counting to 11, or count down by 11 from 1,000.
Oh,
and now,
okay.
And now, obviously, like some people, if you're not a math whiz, start with 100 maybe. But what it does is it forces you to slow down and think. Okay, boom, I'm at 1,000, and then now we're gonna put my math goes 89, right, and so on and so forth. What's it, 70, 78? You know what I'm saying? Just keep going down,
right.
And then, but it slows your mind down, slows your brain down, and it forces you to think. The blood comes back into your brain, every blood flowing through, and then you're able to oh, okay, I don't need to freak out. I need to let me slowly react differently. I can control my reaction, and now my kids are not scared or freaking out because dad's freaking out, because they feed off our emotions. If they see us freak out in every single emotion or in everything that happens, they're like, okay, anything that happens, this is how I need to
Freak out.
respond because this is how my parents respond. This is subconsciously what I've been taught to do in stressful situations. And this is determined to be a stressful situation. So I need to do the same thing. And, I'm guilty of it even for my oldest daughter, because, there are certain times where she does something and I've learned these skills now where I'm like, hey, calm down, relax. It's okay. And it's funny because I see her do it and I go, she totally got that from me. She learned that from me and her mom, who are not yet in that place to know these things that we know now. And so it's one of those things where over time you learn it. And when you do learn it, teach your kids. Oh my goodness, teach your kids. And it doesn't need to be a classroom environment, teach your kids, but it's through how you react and how you respond to things. So now when something happens, rather than freak out, I got to freak out, I got to yell, you just sit there and call cool, calm, collective and be like, hold on, let's figure this out. Let's figure out why this is happening. If there's time, right? Obviously, there are some emergencies that you just need to react in. But if you're able to, in most situations when it comes to kids, you're able to kind of sit back, relax, and say, okay, hey, what is freaking out going to really do for me? Nothing. Okay, what would be a viable response here to better help me and better help my kids? And when they see that, they're like, oh, I don't need to react like this. I don't need all that cortisol to build up and be like, I gotta do something. I'm all jacked up. I'm all juiced up. I don't need to do that. So have that response, which I think is amazing. So I do appreciate the skill because you gave the example of kids running in the street or something. And that is one of those moments where every time it happens, because my little one, 2-year-old, she does that. And I just, what I got, get over here. What are you doing? I'm grabbing her arm like, no, stop. We're in the parking lot of Target. These people, they're going to, God forbid, like, don't do that. Don't run in the street.
I got a great nephew who does that from the time he was little. It's like, you leave the restaurant, that son of a gun is going out into the parking lot. That's stop. But the other thing is too is we're going to be bad at it at first.
Yeah.
Right. We get to be bad at it. I'm bringing it. I'm still mad. It's okay.
It's not working.
Right. I think it's important to our kids. It's okay for our kids to see us, and it's just weird because I don't even like saying it. At times, it's okay to see our kids to see us struggle.
Yes.
Right. In certain areas, age appropriate. Right.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I think for if I had young kids and I was feeling really bad about a financial situation, I might be okay. No, I don't want to share that. Right.
Yeah.
And I get, that's everybody's own choice. So I'm not saying bear all to your kids. Age appropriate, situation appropriate. I think if one time, and this was my dad, like there's a dad thing that flicks off, right? I don't know, but do you go turn off lights if lights are on?
Yes,
extra
100%. I hate when lights are on.
You had to. What is wrong with people? So I got that going, and our one of our toilets would sometimes jiggle and run longer, and so you'd have to jiggle it. And we're watching, and this is my oldest. We're just watching something, and use the bathroom, and it's still going, and I'm like, and I waited about 20 seconds, and I'm like, hey, did you jingle it? And then as soon as I said it, the thing went off. It stopped. And everything. Super minor, right? Small thing. But I'm going like, what was going on there? Why was I so, wanting to make sure he was making sure that we're not wasting an extra, half a gallon of water before, you know what I mean? It was weird. And so I'm like, dang, I'm channeling my dad right now. And I told him, you know what? I said, I don't know, just want me. It's a toilet.
Yeah.
You're doing fine. So
it has no bearing on the big picture, but like in our minds, we're like, I have to solve this. What are you doing? Why is the light on? Yeah, exactly. I'm in charge here. Turn the lights off, sit in darkness until I feel comfortable for the lights to be on, and I want to waste electricity.
Yeah, right. And so, and I'm like, you know what? So I told him, like, what was I think? I don't know. So sorry about that. Let's keep watching. So I think it's sometimes it's I was gonna say fun, and I guess I mean it. Sometimes I could do something dumb, or what was I doing, and then just laugh at myself, right, and say, what was I? And then they get to see, hey, you can do something dumb, And you don't have to knock yourself out, but you can laugh at it and say, "Well, what was that? I don't think I want to do that one again."
Yeah.
Whatever it might be, and to be able to model that, right, is, I think, I wish going back, right, what my dad modeled was burying it inside and going to your office,
Mm-hmm.
and so, and it's weird, right? We're going to teach our kids. We are teaching them all
Mm-hmm.
kinds of stuff, and it doesn't matter. We're teaching them how to control their emotions, and they're going to either say, "Ooh, I like your lesson, and I will do it,"
Yep.
like I did with my dad, bury it, right? Or they might go, "Hey, I think I'm going to do the opposite," right? So it's like 15-year-old Steve copies my dad, right? When I get into a 35-year-old Steve does the opposite of my dad, and there was a lesson there too, but I wish I would have,
It's
not waited till
emotional intelligence.
35.
Yeah,
Yeah.
teaching our kids emotional intelligence. I've talked about this previously. Part of the emotional intelligence in teaching our kids this is showing them the real piece of us, allowing us to be vulnerable in front of our kids. Because how can we expect our kids to be vulnerable in front of us if we're never
Right.
vulnerable in front of them? Now, this does not mean you break down your whole life story,
Nope.
especially if it's a tragic one, to your 6 or 7-year-olds. You will traumatize that young kid for the rest of their life. Do not do that. What I simply mean is a simple example. The best example is what you gave, right? Is a moment like, hey, I don't know why I did that. That was kind of that's like kind of reckless of me to even to do that, because on the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter. Man, just craziness. But like, hey, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done that. I didn't mean to overreact to something so small, right? Like, I just want us to watch TV. I want to watch a TV show, finish watching a TV show with you. I forgive me, right? And I do this with my daughter. I kind of I'll think back on my day before as I'm putting them to bed, and I'll say, okay, where were areas in my day where I could have been better, and that where I wanted to teach them something, but I couldn't get out of my own head, I couldn't get out of my own emotion, it just fell on deaf ears, and so I will do what I'll do is kind of at the end of the day, certain things, not everything, but I'll say, hey, you know what, earlier today, I got upset with you, and I freaked out on you when I didn't need to be. I didn't need to do that. That's not fair to you. And you were doing the right thing. You were doing what I asked you to do. But Dad, you didn't do it on how Dad wanted you to do, on the time Dad wanted it. And I apologize. Like, I love you. It doesn't mean I don't love you. I'm sorry that I did that. And I'm better. I've gotten better at it, where it's been in moments in that moment where I'm like, what am I doing? And I'm like, because I don't want, this is something that my dad did. And I'm like, no, I don't like that. That's why I'm freaking out, because this is what my dad did. And I'm only freaking out because that's kind of what I was subconsciously taught, but I don't want to teach my daughter that. So now I'm changing. And at the moment, I'm like, hey, I'm sorry. Like, no, keep doing what you're doing. That's my fault. It just, you're good. Keep going. You don't need to worry about Dad. I'm over here reliving the moment. I got it.
So how do you switch gears from, literally being in charge
Mm-hmm.
to going home and having kids who you're still in charge, but
Oh,
it's different, right? So how do
well,
you switch from?
Well, it's taken a lot of practice. I will tell you, I used to bring work home. I no longer bring work home. That is why I do come up to my office at times. And my wife will know, because I'll call her on the way home, give her a synopsis of my day, and then she'll understand when I come home, like, okay, he didn't have a good day. And I go up to my office and I'll be sitting up here, and then within the first, after like 20 minutes or so, come back and I've collected my thoughts, and I come down. But you know, one of the things that I've learned being a leader in the military, and this is not to disparage my soldiers by any means, but it is reality. And for me, is when you become a dad, you start to realize that you're not a dad for everybody, but a lot of the skills that you learn as a dad are applicable to your everyday life as a leader, especially within the military. So my soldiers have these issues and have these problems, and I can respond by yelling or getting upset and being like, blah, 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 blah. Or I can respond how I would respond with my daughters, with patience, and say, okay, they don't understand. So I need to teach them. They're coming to me with their problem.
Right.
How would it look if I just came in and I went over the top at 100, and they will no longer will come to me with their problems. Now, what I need to do is, hey, I see you have a problem, and I'm trying to help you, and I want to help you think critically to help you solve your problems, but I also want you to be able to solve your problems in the future. So And it's just learning that. And so even when I come home, because I don't change that person that I am from home or from being that dad to at work, it's easy. It's for me. It's easy because I'm not. I don't have to be two different people. I can be that same person. And it's like I said, it's been a learned skill. And I always remember this one drill sergeant, and I tell people all the time because everything he did, he reminded me of my dad. And it was always this thing where, as a drill sergeant, you have this image that you have to portray, and you know this, right? You have this image that they must portray of, I'm here to set standards and and discipline, and if you're not going to follow standards and discipline, well, I'm also here to dish out punishment. And there's this one drill sergeant where he would come in, basically kick down the door, drill sergeant veteran, and he would just be like, he'd look around, be all like, "Howdy," he's right, come in, he'd be like, all right, whatever, go in his office. Something would happen, and he comes out ready to go to war, just on the war path, and we're just out there, just like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, just going, just doing flutter kicks, freaking push-ups, half jacks, whatever, 8-count push-ups, just going through the whole thing, right? And then as we're sitting there in the V up, and that was usually his last exercise for us. He's like, for those who are not in the military, these are particular exercises. You can look them up; you'll understand what I'm referring to. But we're sitting there in the V up, and we're just sitting there, and he's kind of walking around. He goes, guys, I don't like being the bad guy. I don't like being the bad drill sergeant or the mean drill sergeant. He goes, but I have a job. I have a role here, and I need you guys to understand that I don't do this because it brings me joy. I do this because this is how the best way for you to learn what I'm trying to teach you. And he would say it just like that angry, that over the top drill sergeant voice was gone. And it was the fatherly love drill sergeant, or the father that was coming out of him saying, like, I don't like punishing you guys. It doesn't bring me joy to see you struggle through the push-ups, through these exercises, and feel like I'm attacking you, and I'm coming from a place of superiority, and there's nothing you can do about it. No, I'm doing this because there's consequences to our actions, and these are your consequences to your actions of not doing what I said, or whatever the case might be. And in the end, there were a few people who didn't like that, but for me, I always knew at the end of it, he was not doing it because he hated us and he wanted just to prove he had the power. He was doing it because he was doing it from a place of love, and he cared about how we came out as soldiers, right? When we leave basic training, he wanted us to leave with our head up high, shoulders back, confident, saying, "Hey, I'm a soldier now. I earned it," rather than just showing up and grunting our way through it. You know what I mean? So that's what I reminded me of, and that's kind of the leadership style that I take in when I work and when I'm at home. And so it helps. It's very helpful. I didn't know it. I didn't see it until 2 or 3 soldiers said to me, I remember them saying to me, they're like, I don't, and they were upset with me. Right. And they're like, you're not my dad. You need to stop treating me like your kid. And I'm like, listen, man, at the time I had one kid. I was like, I am not I said, I'm the father to one person, and you're not her. I promise you that. Right. And I didn't understand in the beginning, like, treating you like my kid. I'm not treating, what are you talking about, treating you like my kid? But in the end, I understood it was because, hey man, I care so much that but you still need to understand, you still need to be disciplined. You don't understand where I'm coming from and why you're wrong, and why you were wrong for doing what you did.
But first, thanks for the reminder of flutter kicks. That did put a smile on my face, because I can remember basic training, rolling in Fort Leonard Wood, flutter kicks for days, right? And I think, though, a lot of people who aren't in the military need to, or anybody who thinks about like a drill sergeant style of parenting, have to, I would hope, pause for a second and think a drill instructor is taking 300 civilians and intentionally breaking them down of all of their habits and teaching them how to walk like you walk in the army, and so that shouting. And I can it was funny, back when I was in, they were almost starting to phase out swearing, and they weren't even close. The amount of times somebody was yelling at, "I need a effing this," and "You're going to blow the effing bricks off the
Yeah.
wall when you shout so loud. It's like, that's to break down adults in civilian life and build them back up as soldiers with confidence to go face all the things people in the military have to face, right? And so that's like, you know, if you're yelling at your kids outside of the stop from running across the street, right? You got to
Yeah.
ask yourself, what are you breaking them down for?
Yeah.
Or two, you know? And so I like what you said about you can, and it sounds like a couple had it even, it can be hard when somebody actually cares about you, right? Like you are doing and say, hey, I want to help you. And I think sometimes it's easier, right? Just yell at me.
Yeah.
Right? Just yell at me and then I can go back and like everything's the same. Because if you're nice and you offer and give me a chance to think, I might have to actually change something, right?
That's the
Easier.
crazy part, right? Because some people don't want to change,
Oh.
or they're afraid of change, that they're like, I have a soldier who's like, I just want you to, he goes, just smoke me, or just give me an ARC-15, rather than sitting down, counseling him and saying, hey man, listen, so this is the facts of what happened. This is what you did. This is what your plan of action is going to be. And this is why I want to understand why you did what you did. And I want you to think about what you did. Can you explain that to me and understand, so I can understand where you're coming from? So then I can tell you where I'm coming from. We come together, hopefully in some form or fashion, and say, okay, cool, I understand where you're coming from. However, that's not how we do it in the Army, or that's not what the Army says we need to do, or whatever the case might be. And now we're able to meet in the middle. But then again, that forces both parties in some form or way to admit that they were wrong, or admit defeat in some form or way. But I tell people all the time, it's not about winning or losing, it's about growing. And some people just don't want to grow. And even with our kids, we want our kids to grow up to be successful people or adults. So is it about you being superior to your kids, or is it about you teaching your kids and growing your kids, so when they get to the point that you are at currently, they can look back on the time that they said, Dad taught me how to navigate my emotions when I'm feeling angry, what I need to do, or when I'm feeling sad, what I couldn't do. Or Dad taught me when I'm in a difficult situation, tips and tricks, or how to get out of these difficult situations, or what I can do to get out of difficult situations, rather than just scream, throw my hands up in the air, running in a circle like your SpongeBob, saying, I don't know what to do. You know what I'm saying? And you learn and all these life lessons. But it's the goal. Ultimate goal is to grow, and rather than just continue to be where we are, because we're always growing and we're always improving. I wanted to follow. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, and I was just going to say too, sometimes the fear isn't of failure either. It's fears of success.
Yes.
Because if I do this, now all of a sudden I've proven that I can do this. What if you're now all of a sudden going to expect me to do that all the time? Or what if I succeed and all of the good things that I think are going to happen don't? You know, I mean, so success can be sometimes even scarier than failure, you know, depending where you're coming from, right? So it's important to have that conversation and see what's really going on.
No, absolutely. Sorry, I'm looking something up because it made me think of something when you said that. Hold on. It's if you guys, Coach Carter, and when the young man stands up. I don't know if you've seen Coach Carter, the basketball movie, with is it
Denzel Washington, right?
No, that's Samuel L. Jackson. He's
okay, yeah.
Yeah. And so he goes, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It's our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? And then it goes on to say, you are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightening about shrinking so that other people won't feel unsure around you. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us, is not just in some of us, it's in everyone. As we let our light shine, we consciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. And this poem is so great, and I love it every time. It's one of my favorite scenes in Coach Carter, because it's the young man in the movie is acknowledging that this entire time he wasn't afraid of failing. He was afraid of showing people his light, showing people that he could succeed, right? Because the burden of constantly succeeding brings fear that if I do fail, are they going to still like me?
Yeah.
Or if I do succeed, am I going to be trampling other people and they're not going to like me because I'm succeeding? So we shrink and we say we make ourselves we hide ourselves amongst the average, if you will, because it's better to be average amongst the average and be average rather than say, hey, I'm actually great. I just don't want to be an outcast because I'm great. So it's amazing. That's what it made me think of when you said that.
And that's a great poem, right? And it's true. And there are, it's funny in the Mankind Project. That was the men's thing that I did. They actually made a T-shirt. In the front of it said leader, in the back of it had a target on it.
Yeah.
Right? Because
So true.
It doesn't matter. It could be somebody that comes, oh man, that guy is awesome. And somebody else will be, oh, that son of a, so when you go up, there will absolutely be a percentage. It's small, but they're always loud, right? That are going to be like, oh, you think you're special now? Or you know what I mean? They'll do something. And yet, do you want to, I know I don't want my boys to not be who they're meant to be, right?
Yeah.
And whatever that is, it's like, this is the one I think is tough, right? How do we teach our kids that some people aren't going to like you for who you are, and that's on them, not you?
That's hard. That's hard because we want our kids to be accepted in every situation. And the reality is they're not, because we're not. We are not. There are so many times even at work, where I even say right now, there are a group of people that I have done my best to because I'm being me, and and living true essence of that poem of I'm refusing to shrinking myself, refuse not letting my light shine, but it's and they just don't like me, and it is what it is, it bothers me because I was like, I don't understand why they don't like me. It's not that I want to be liked or people please. It's just like, I want to understand, and if I can understand, maybe I can fix it. Maybe we can come together and we can figure it out. But the reality is there are people who have made their minds up. They're like, I refuse to like a person like you because A, B, and C, or whatever they got going on in their lives. And one thing I say to try to teach our kids is, rather than try to teach them how to handle or how do we fix that? It's remembering you can control. There's only one thing you control, and that's yourself.
Yeah.
You can't control other people, and you can control yourself. So if you can keep control of yourself, ultimately, you'll be just fine. And, like you said, there's some people who are not going to like you, and that's fine. That is totally okay. You don't need to be liked by everyone, I promise. But as parents of those kids, we want our kids to be liked by everyone. And it is a little disheartening to find out like such and such doesn't like our kid. And you're just like, well, such and such sucks. So I don't care. You can tell him I said it.
Angry at this 9-year-old. I would.
Tell little Timmy to show back at the park. I'll kick him in the face myself. Oh man, I'm joking. I would never harm a kid. But that being said, I wanna end here with
I would take Timmy out. You got no harming of children, but you got to joke too.
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes, and I think it's good to have some men in your life where you can, not vent forever, because then that just leads to its whole other parts, right? But get some of that out and go, that little SOB didn't invite my kid to his birthday party. Everybody else is in the class. Okay, I had to vent to you. Now I'm just going to go back and be supportive to my son without, you know what I mean? But you were...
Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, when I, the sense of humor that I had in the Army would absolutely have gotten me fired in my career as a teacher. There's
100%.
different... I got a friend who is a cop, same thing. If you're in a situation where firefighter, law enforcement, even, healthcare, where you're seeing and all kinds of stuff, it's like sometimes you got a little twisted sense of humor.
The dark humor helps get through it. And those jokes are never recorded. Those jokes are always said in confidence.
Yes, not for public consumption.
Look, it's not for public consumption. It is. Those jokes are internally to us, because it's as we say in the Army, trauma bonding. it's our trauma bonding moment, and so we will keep those jokes reserved for us because it's the inside joke that we have, if you will, and within those situations. But I wanted to ask you and finish summarize with two questions for you. So all of the things that you went through with growing up with your dad, and then obviously we didn't get into it, but I'm sure there was an impact on your mother, of course, which then impacted her ability to be a mom to you guys, or you and your brother. I don't know if you had any other siblings, but you and your brother in particular. So with that, yeah, and then going through that, and then growing up and becoming an adult, and kind of having those values and those beliefs set in because of that situation that happened in your life. How did you transform into the person where you were like, I want to help young men, I want to help adolescents or young men, other adults, and I want to help them so they can be better because or whatever the case may be. So how did that transformation go from that to this is what my purpose is, this is what I was put here for?
All right. So, and remember, I think 20-year-old Steve, he gets to complain and blame mom and dad. 30 plus, knock it off, Steve, you're done. And I think the turning point for me was I'd done some stuff, emotional awareness things. And then I went to a Boys to Men event, which was about, it's kind of like an entry point training that they had up. And when I started mentoring, I was like, oh, this feels so good. I can stop complaining, feeling sorry for myself about what happened and what I didn't get, and be the man I wanted in my life for somebody else. And in that growth, for me, it was like, that was it. That was a huge awakening. It's like, look, that past is never going to change. Whatever wounds we get, and we all have them from growing up. Right. And it doesn't matter how great our parents are, there's going to be something. And I'm doing that to I'm sure as hell not trying, but I'm sure my boys are going to have something.
Yeah.
And it's like, you can do a couple different things with it. And the beautiful thing, I think, is to turn that wound, right? There's gold there. Right. So for me, I didn't have that man in my life that I needed. Okay. That sucks. Guess what? Being a man, showing up for people who need it, that feels pretty good. You know what I mean? That was what was all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I'm doing all this other stuff, going into the army, learning martial arts, right? And doing this, and doing that. And that's going to make me a man. I was like, no, it's like service to others. And all of a sudden, oh, I just got a little piece back, and that for me was really, that was a huge part of it. And just that service. And so I would always ask when I was the director of this thing and somebody came in and they wanted to volunteer. And that's like, okay, yeah, you like kids, great. What are you going to get out of this? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I wanted them to know that for sure, when you help others, you get something out of it. There's a value to volunteering that, it's a selfless act, but you can do it for selfish reasons.
Yeah.
Because it is healing. And to me, that's great, right? I mean, what a win.
Yeah.
You can help somebody else and help yourself.
Absolutely. I love it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. And then final question. You have this, and you sent it to me, this guide for journaling, a guided journal for dads. And you sent it to me, haven't started, but I'm going to start it. It's awesome. It has all these prompts in there, in which you could, you read, and then you kind of respond within your own notes. And then obviously one of my favorite parts of this is the picture part. So I'm going to share some of your book, but it's awesome. The picture part right here. Where's my finger? There it is. The picture. And you put a photo, it says, put a family picture here and to write about it and why it's your favorite. And I read that and I was like, that's a great way to start this, because that is a reminder to dads of why you're doing what you're doing.
Yep.
And because so many times we go to work, come home, eat dinner, put the kids to bed, go to bed ourselves, hug our wives, kiss our wives goodnight, wake up, do it all over again. Saturday, mow the lawn, do the outside work, do the chores. Sunday, go to church, watch some football, drink some beer, go to sleep, wake up, and we do it all over again. We're in cycle repeat, right? All over again. And we forget why we're doing the things that we're doing. Why am I going to work in the first place? Who am I going to work for in the first place? Am I going to work just for money? Sure, the money's part of it, but I'm going to work because I need to put food on the table for my kids. I'm going to work because my kids rely on me and my wife relies on me to be the man of the house and be able to take care of them and make sure that we have money to put gas in the car so they can go to gymnastics, so they can go to their sports events, so they can go to their things that they want to, so they can have some semblance of what being a kid is, rather than just sitting here, I'm doing these things because somebody or the world says I have to do these things, but I'm doing these things. There's a purpose, and my kids are that purpose. In this journal, for me, what I'm going to take from what I plan to take from it is continuously reminding me of what my purpose is and what my reason why. So for you, it's your book. So if you could explain give a brief explanation, I would love that.
First off, that's beautiful, right? And my intention behind it. So it's a guided journal, which just means this: at the top of each page, there's a question for dads. And at the bottom of the next page over, there's a small space for an insight or action step, right? Because this is meant to actually give you time to think about something that's important to you, right? Which is being a dad, and there's a whole range of questions. And you write as much as little as you want. I've got my copy, right, that I go through. And sometimes if I just have a little to write, I write a little, date it, and that's maybe I got something out of it. And there's practical stuff, right? Like what's the messy part of your house apartment, and if you clean it and get done, what can you do afterwards? Or it can be, some of it's practical, right? And others are like, what is dinner like? What do you want dinner to be like?
Yeah.
And I think we get so caught up, and this is understandable, in our job and just doing what we've done, that here's a journal that you can take and spend 10 minutes whenever you want, right? You don't have to do it every day or anything like that, and give yourself a chance, catch your breath, think about something about being a dad. So I have a table of contents in the front, so you can go through it in order if you want, or you can just open up that, scroll down the 50 plus questions and say, oh, that's the one that's calling to me, right? Go to there and do a little writing. And I think, having time, it's kind of like that breathing thing from earlier. This is a way to just that is so important. And yet thinking about it, I think, and I find this for myself too, right? It gets pushed back from, well, I'm trying to get to tennis, right? I've got to do this other thing. And then I have to hit Costco, right? Because we need 8 pounds of chicken that we're going to vacuum for. It's like, oh wait, no, so that's a place to really think about what it is you want. What are the steps that you can take to get there, or at least try, right? Try to get there.
That's awesome. I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much, Steve, for coming on. I appreciate it. It's been an amazing time talking with you. Hey team, don't worry. Everything from the book to his other works and his all of his social media and other things, ways if you want to reach out to him, whatever the case will be in the description below. So don't worry, you can check all that out. Places where to find him and kind of look more and give some more information for yourselves. It will be out there. But before we go, guys, Steve, do you have any last piece of advice, any piece of wisdom you want to depart the audience with?
Be the best that you can in the moment, right? It's not about being perfect. It's not about super. And sometimes your best is just not losing your top. And that's okay. That's a good day. So it's not about being great. It's about being the best you can in the moment with what you got.
Guys, and that's a perfect segue to end this episode. And as I always tell you guys, being mediocre is a choice, and you have to refuse to be mediocre every single day. That's all I got for you guys. Mediocre Dads out.